Top TV, Truth of the People.
This is Paul's Power Pie, and I invite you again to Paul's Power Pie. It is your host, Paul Newman, the only TV host who, instead of getting a girlfriend, is getting thinner and thinner. Anyway, welcome to Paul's Power Pie, and it is a great show, and today we are having a very great topic. It is something which has been so common in our country, and for example, we have seen just recently students being frisked and inspected in schools because of drug abuse, maybe because of the things maybe which are counterfeit they're coming within their schools. And most of the students have been found that they are having drugs, and maybe they are carrying bank, wengine wanabeba pombe and all that. And it's something which has been disturbing us in our country so much. Drug abuse, substance use disorder, substance use, and something which has caused our country, maybe our society, to be so messy. For example, I was watching the meeting which was happening at Mombasa for principals who are doing a meeting, the annual meeting, and I was just looking at it, and most of the principals were complaining about drug abuse in their schools. And even at some point, I remember there's this principal who was talking about kijana amepatikana anavuta bangi, and then they called the parent, and the parent denies and says hapana, mtoto yangu atumiangi hizi vitu. And then at some point the child says that madhe, mimi natumianga hizi vitu. We even don't know that our children are using such stuffs. And you know what? It is about imitation. They are learning from what they see from our adults, what they see from our society and all that. So that makes me think that we should talk about this topic deeply. And maybe today we may not talk about everything, but we'll talk about some few things here and there. And I have a guest for that case to talk about this thing. So let me introduce my guest, and welcome to our show today. And you can introduce yourself to our viewers.
My name is Juliet. Today I come in with the shoes of a psychologist and specifically an addiction counselor. And we shall expound more on addiction, because so many people are struggling with addiction. And let us give or hit it on its head and call it what it is, because it is an addiction. Yeah,
welcome so much, Juliet. And I am so happy to have an addiction counselor with that art. It's very important here right now. We want to talk about addiction. And maybe just to start, just go straight to the point. What is addiction? When we talk about addiction, what is this people are talking about?
Okay, addiction is a condition.
Yeah.
And this condition, somebody is unable to do without it.
Yeah.
Or has a persistent pattern of that condition.
Yeah.
And with addiction, it's psychologically we define it as a disease.
Yeah.
Because one, it is a biological disease. It is genetically inherited. It is a spiritual disease because it detaches you with the spiritual aspect and withdraws you from God. It is a social disease because it makes you pull out from people.
Yeah.
And it is a psychological disease because the craving is psychological.
Yeah. Wow, that's a good definition. And I think I like the way you've defined it from different approaches. So when you're talking about addiction, I think we have so many types of addiction, because we have like so many people, you hear them saying that I'm addicted to this, I'm addicted to that and all that. So maybe you can briefly talk about what types of addiction maybe are there in our field maybe.
Okay, we have several types of addiction, but allow me classify them into two.
Yeah.
We have chemical addiction and we have behavioral addiction. So for chemical addiction, you get addicted to substance. So you're chemically addicted to using certain substance. And for behavioral addiction, you have a compulsive repeated pattern of a certain behavior that you can't stay away without doing it.
Yeah. So we find that chemical is where we have maybe you use substances for you to get addicted and all that. Oh, I see. So perhaps maybe today as I introduced maybe our show, we're talking about maybe people who are they are getting addicted to substances and all that, mostly drugs, and that's why maybe it brings us to talk about drug addiction. So what is drug addiction exactly?
As I said earlier, addiction is a disease.
Yeah, it's a disease.
And when we come to drug addiction, you know, with addiction, it comes from your brain.
Yeah.
So we define addiction as a brain disease. Yeah. So, and with this brain disease, you're attached to staying with substance or using substance, whether they are legal or illegal drugs, that you can't stay without using them.
Okay, so maybe you can maybe tell us maybe some of the drugs which people are using. You know, maybe some days back I was talking to someone, then I was listening we were talking about some drugs, then nikasema zingine, someone was like, oh,
so you use them. People always think because you're mentioning drugs, you use drugs. Yeah,
sure.
But knowledge is power, and understanding the kind of drugs, it's so effective.
Yeah.
And I'll start by defining what a drug is. And a drug is any substance that when taken changes the normal functioning of the body from normal to abnormal or from abnormal to normal. So it's two-way.
Two-way, yeah.
Because Piriton is a drug, right?
Yeah.
And bang is a drug. Cannabis is a drug.
Cousin, you're different.
No, the work is different, but they are all drugs. So we have legal drugs and illegal drugs. But in terms of now addiction, we won't major specifically on legal drugs, but illegal drugs. Though people abuse legal drugs as well, but our main part is in illegal drugs.
Illegal drugs. Yeah. Maybe you can list maybe some of the drugs, maybe, you know, do you want to maybe use these drugs? Okay,
we classify these drugs into several groups. We have stimulants, we have depressants, and so on. So for stimulants, they are those that stimulate, from the word stimulants. They stimulate the body functions. They kind of make them hyperactive. Things like weed or cannabis. Yeah, so they stimulate. It works to stimulating the body functions.
That's where the highness comes from.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then we have now drugs like alcohol, which fall under depressants. And from the word depressants, they depress or suppress. So they pull down the normal functioning of the body. So you start acting on your unconscious mind. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Betty Juliet, for that. And maybe, maybe would you mind explaining to us how do people get to addiction? Like, what are these stages whereby someone gets to addiction?
Okay, addiction is a process. Before you become or before you graduate to becoming a full addict, you have to follow a certain process. So in everything you do, you start by experimenting. So that is the same thing with addiction. Before you graduate to becoming a full addict or a person who cannot do without a certain substance, you start by experimenting that substance. So addiction is a process that follows a certain stage. So with the experimental use, you start by trying it out. And mostly you'll get it from friends, or maybe you see your role model using it and you'll tend to use it. So you start experimenting that substance. So after experimenting, you become a social user or a regular user. Unaanza kuishia bash hivi. So on weekends hupatikani.
Unaenda Friday,
unaenda Monday. Unaenda kuchapa weekend. And from being a social user, you become a risky user. Yeah. So you start developing that risky behavior. We call them risky behaviors. So your routine changes from using the substance on weekends to using it like almost daily.
So the guys, we find them at Timtaros, eh?
Exactly. And now from risky behavior, it graduates to dependency. When you get dependent on substance or alcohol, you cannot completely do without this substance. You understand? So you're chemically dependent on that substance. And with chemical dependency, it carries a lot of symptoms, because that is now where you start having withdrawal symptoms. Once you have not consumed that substance, you start having headaches, you start shaking, and these symptoms become severe until you take your substance of choice. And now from chemical dependency, you come to addiction. And now that is where we said addiction becomes now a disease. Because you understand it has followed a stage from experimenting to being a regular user, to a risky user, and then becoming chemically dependent, and now it falls to addiction, which we said it is a biopsychospiritual disease or a biopsychosocial disease.
Oh, I like that. I like that. I like that. So, and then this one makes me think again, why is it that people get addicted? Why is it that kuna watu wengine, they are not getting addicted, others are getting addicted? What are these roots of addiction? I don't know. Maybe you can expound for us this.
I'll answer this by saying everything has a causation. Like a tree grows, and a tree can never grow from the stem. So a tree will have to grow from the roots. And these roots are the one which will make that thing persist. So addiction has its root causes. And as we said, addiction is genetically inherited. So one of the root cause of addiction is genetics.
Genes,
it is carried with the DNA. So I don't know, we'll have to tell pregnant women to stop using drugs. Anyway, it's carried with the DNA composition, and that is one of the root cause. Number two, you become an addict because of the social influence. Friends initiated you to using it. And now it becomes worse if you had that recessive gene of any drug, and then you end up using drugs for the first time. So you will end up using drugs for the rest of your life until you get help.
I remember in high school, the peer pressure we were getting, like, you know, buying alcohol, na muna buy a quarter, and then you don't have money, and you are pressured to buy something even you don't have money to buy. You know, you look cool, you buy in something like a quarter and all that. So that's the peer pressure.
So, and then now we've mentioned genetic as a cause or a root cause to addiction. We've mentioned the social factor of it, including now the peer pressure. And now we have the environmental causation. The kind of environment we try to raise our kids. Is it exposing them to drugs? Maybe we are living here and just outside our door, somebody is selling cannabis. A high degree is that my kid will end up using cannabis, you see. And then we have other factors like anxiety, that fear. You just want to deal with that fear by using drugs. We have other factors like stress. Maybe you just want to cope with stress by using drugs. We have emotional factors like abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse. Maybe trauma, somebody, we have things like trauma. Maybe you went through something that is traumatizing and you want to deal with it. So you end up using substance to cope with what? To cope with this condition. And by that time you're using it to cope with that condition, you end up to being a full addict. A full addict,
I can imagine. So again, maybe it is true that our society is using it, and that's a fact. And we can see the effects. Maybe you can mention to us some of the effects maybe people are getting when you use these drugs and maybe substances.
We have several effects. Maybe we can start with the physical effects.
Physical effects.
You can find this person becomes hyper or maybe aggressive. People who are addicts or people who engage themselves in substance end up to being very violent. They can't control the emotions. They can't hold them. They can't hold on. If something triggers them, they just want to act on impulse. And then now we come to emotional. Such people tend to become antisocial. Especially, let me use an example with Kat Mira. people who use cat, a high percentage of them tend to become antisocial. They want to withdraw socially from the social environment. They want to be in their own world. You understand?
Yeah.
And we come now to psychological effect. And remember, everything in addiction stems from the brain. That is why we call addiction a brain disease. So psychologically, addiction will affect your brain because that craving is persistent. So you won't be settled because you have that craving for that substance of choice. And then now spiritually, it affects you because, as we said, it pulls you away from God.
That's why I saw someone, mtu anakunywa pombe kama samaki huko, anaanguka tu kabisa tu. So that's physical part. Okay. So maybe because I think there's always hope. Even despite of all these things and all that, there's always hope for good. There's always hope for change and maybe good things, and we are always optimistic. Can someone recover from this thing? From someone recover from addiction? And what is the process of recovering, and what is, you know?
Despite of addiction being a disease, it is a treatable disease. And there is hope for every addict. So addiction is not the end of life. You've been there, but now tear your shit down and move on.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have processes to recovery, and we start with the pre-contemplation. Understand your behavior. I am an addict. But now you won't stay there. After understanding your problem is your addiction, or that bad behavior is your addiction, come contemplate. So from pre-contemplation stage, move to contemplation stage. In the contemplation stage, you start to critically challenging that behavior. And now after challenging that behavior, you come to another stage we call preparation stage. In this stage, you now start asking yourself, how should you go about it? What do you need to do? Who are the people you need for you to change this behavior? So from preparation, you come to action stage. You act, you implement those things you thought in the preparation stage you need to do. Those people you thought you need to put to be effective in your change. Start bringing them in. Start implementing new changes.
Yani unachangamuka sasa.
Exactly. So from implementation, we have the last stage, which is maintenance. And in the maintenance stage, you try to put up with the new behavior you've adapted. Psychologically, we say behavior is learned. You can unlearn the behavior and you can relearn the behavior. So in a nutshell, if you follow that cycle, you can maintain the cycle. But if you don't maintain, you know, that is where now it comes with status quo. You want to have strategies to keep on that change. Strategies to help you maintain that change. So if you can't change, what will happen? You relapse.
You go back
and
again.
You get back to square one. Yeah, you understand? So there is hope for every addict out there. Maybe you can opt in going in a rehab. Maybe you can opt to seeking psychosocial support. We have Alcoholic Anonymous groups for any addict. They are ever online. You can Google and you'll see them. We have Narcotic Anonymous groups if you feel you are struggling with a certain kind of addiction. So there is hope for any addict. And you know, with us youths, we keep on saying, ni raha tunachapa, but utachapa raha hadi lini? For how long will you use drugs?
Na iya tuta.
Exactly. And one funny thing with drugs, they'll always keep you stagnant in one position. You've no progress in life. You can't move on. You can't do anything by yourself. Pesa yako unashika hivi umepeleka kwa madre. Like, mpaka sasa ufikirie, utakujaje uache hii shida, because it is a disease. And you have to work on it. And in addiction, we treat addiction like any other disease. Vile tuna treat cancer, that is the same way we treat addiction. because it is a disease.
Yeah, sure.
And acha tusikae in the avenues of I don't care. I'm using it, I don't care. Hakuna pesa yako natumia, I don't care. Because the beautiful avenues of I don't care will always lead us to a city of misery of I wish I knew.
Yeah.
And if wishes were horses, beggars would have ridden.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hiyo ni kujitafutia kwenda grave.
Exactly. Unajichimbia kaburi we mwenyewe.
Misumari unagongelea misumari kwa jeneza yako.
Yeah.
So maybe thank you so much baby Juliet for bringing us to understand some of these things. Maybe unajua huko nje people wanachapa sherehe tu. Ni sherehe weekend Friday. Mtu saizi leo ni Friday, by the way leo ni Friday. We have shot our show on Friday, by the way, don't forget. Saizi kuna mtu anasema ameweka viatu zake kwa mlango hivi. So ni kupigiwa tu simu tu anaenda anakanyanga viatu tu anatoka. Ataonekana Monday kwa job tena akiwa drug. So what is maybe the last word to our viewers about drugs? Maybe the concluding word. Yes, we went up.
Okay. The final thing I can say about drugs is that let us not make drugs a part of our life. Because the moment we get married to drugs, detaching ourselves from it will be very difficult. And in most aspects, maybe in terms of religion, most of our religions don't applaud drugs. Yeah, they view them as illegal. Our constitution views them. Most of these drugs are illegal. And even if we have even these ones that they are called legal drugs, they still have effects. So let us be careful on the drugs we use and how we use them. Maybe it has been a challenge for somebody out there to stop using drugs, but a journey of a milestone starts with one step.
Exactly.
So you just have to make a decision. I need to change. Understand you need to change. Because they'll still make you stuck in one position. How you were 5 years back, it's how you are now. And to many addicts, if you listen to their stories, if they were taken back to a younger them, they really wish they can change a lot. That is why I told you the beautiful avenues of I don't care will always lead us to a city of misery of I wish I knew. Because now you'll come try to realize you need to change when it's too late.
For 50 years, you are messed up.
And you find maybe you've spent all your years in rehab. You're out of rehab this year. After 2 months, you're in rehab again. Or maybe after 2 years, you're in rehab again. Or you're into substance again. Especially kwetu sisi mayouths. Unajua saa ingine tunaangalia ngama Peru akituambia tuachane na madre. Tunaona ni kama like hakuna kitu anatuambia because we want to feel we are superior being with friends who are using drugs. But drugs will never make you superior. See, whether you're using or not, you still remain to be the same person. So stopping to use drugs will never change anything in you.
Wow. That's a good one. That's a smart one. And thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. And you being an addiction counselor, I think we need to call you more and more. We discuss about these drugs. In fact, we need to talk about one drug to the another one. Like tukuja hapa tuseme tunaongelea bangi peke yake, tukuja hapa tunaongelea this one another. So as people can understand these things. So guys, we cannot finish talking about this kind of a topic. It's a topic which is very wide and it has a lot of things, as you have heard from our addiction counselor. So guys, think about it. Think about your life. If you are messing up your life at 20s with drugs and other addictions, then think about it ukiwa na 80 years. What about your grandchildren? Utakuwa na wao kwanza. Watakuwa wanataka kuona babu mwenye analewangwa kama venye nimesema kama samaki, anakunywa maji huko kama samaki. So think about it. And maybe to finish up with our show, if you think that you are too small to make a change, you have never spent a night with a mosquito. See you again. It's your host, Paul Nyumu.